tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. The president is on vacation. Congress is out of Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump is still the story. But I think he's less substantive looking now since the debate that took place last week. He's in a bit of a war with people who are criticizing him over his comments about Fox News' Megyn Kelly. We'll get your comments on that a little bit later. He was also disinvited from Eric Erickson's Red State Gathering over the weekend. But he's still a post-debate number one in most polls, although I don't think we have all those results in yet. Some of that story has yet to be told. In the NBC poll, Ted Cruz is actually number two. And then in other polls, we see Carly Fiorina and also Ben Carson rising. Does that surprise you? Well, there's a lot to discuss with regard to the debate. We're also going to talk about and continue to discuss the videos that were released regarding Planned Parenthood. We're going to have a couple of guests on this issue. One will be Tim Graham from the Media Research Center. He's going to talk about the whole effort by Planned Parenthood and others to squelch those videos. How much traction will that get? What will be released? I'm sort of wondering if anything would be released now anyway with Congress out of session. Perhaps it's better to wait. I know there are many more of those. And we'll talk about just what we're learning from those, what it says about Planned Parenthood, and do they even have any kind of a defense left. And then we'll have another guest later in the program. It's going to be another interesting topic to talk about. Well, does sex sell anymore? That has been conventional wisdom in advertising, but is it really true? So we'll talk a little bit about the media today, but I want to go back to the debate. I missed Friday's program because I took a little anniversary getaway with my husband, and I'm back now, rested, and Kirby is out, so I'll be sitting in for him a few times for the rest of the month, and he'll be back in also various times, so we're just kind of going to play tag team here on Point of View. I'm so grateful to be able to do so. I love doing the show, and I want to go back to the debate a little bit and talk about what we're seeing here, because Fox News Sunday, of course, brought in some of the people to talk after the debate, and Donald Trump himself, he's certainly taking on the issues that strong conservatives care about, but people are starting to wonder about his demeanor and also his prep time. One of his main advisors actually left already because he wouldn't. My guest is Rachel Alexander. She is actually senior editor at The Stream. And she's also a political columnist and founder of the Intellectual Conservative. She's a great writer. She also writes for Town Hall, Sellos Foundation for Public Policy Research, and the Christian Post. She's a commentator in various places. She's actually, it says here on her bio, recovering attorney. She's an attorney by education, I'm sure. And I love interviewing attorneys because they're very succinct usually in their statements. She's appeared on several TV shows and many radio shows, and we're glad to have her today. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Catherine.
I'm Penna. Catherine's our producer, and I'm Penna, hosting Point of View today. But, sometimes we have time to digest things over a weekend, and certainly we've had the Sunday shows to do that. So would you just talk a little bit about, number one, your view of whether the debate helped or hurt Donald Trump? He seems to always be very confident, but I'm just sort of wondering if things are starting to unravel a bit since we're not seeing a whole lot of substance there.
Well, I keep thinking that these gaffes that he makes are going to hurt them, and every time he says something, it, just gets more outrageous, such as, criticizing John McCain's POW service. Every time he says something like that, he just continues to rise in the polls. So despite the fact that I think he made some pretty awful gaffes during the debate, I think he's just going to continue in popularity. I don't think it's hurt him yet. I think
it's a little bit scary for conservatives then, because he doesn't get the nomination, probably. And then if he does get the nomination, he could lose, correct?
I believe so. I think he's playing everybody. He might really run as a third party. He might not. He's in it for himself, his own selfish interest, but he also does really genuinely want to be president at this point. I think if he were to win, he would serve out a term. But what worries me is if he does win the primary and get to the general election, where the middle of the road people, the independents, the squishy people decide things. They don't pay real close attention to politics. They just watch the biased liberal news media, and then the liberal news media is going to go after him with a vengeance. And we live in this gotcha era, gotcha politics. Oh, you said that, you're so evil, you're so racist. That's how they're going to get him.
Okay, before we get to the other members on the stage in the main part of the debate, let's go to the happy hour debate for a minute, because have you been surprised by the attention? Actually, the performance of Carly Fiorina, I think nobody could really argue that she didn't do a great job, but about her rise now in some of the polls and just her performance on the news shows over the weekend?
I wasn't terribly surprised, but because I had her speak before and she was pretty good. But it was interesting. Some of the other candidates just did so poorly. And, even ones who have been around for a while, like Rick Perry. He just couldn't, hammer every answer. He was just sort of like all over the board, and whereas she was just to the point and sharp. And it just goes to show how arbitrary, it is cutting these candidates off at only the top 10 for the major debates, because, the only woman in the race, Carla Fiorina, the two major presidential candidates from 2012, Rick Santorum and Rick Perry. They both got cut out. And if you think about it, it's so stupid considering, usually like the second runner-up candidate in one cycle ends up becoming the nominee the next cycle. Look at Romney, look at Reagan. And so, not just cutting out her for being a woman, but Rick Santorum and Rick Perry, I thought it was very arbitrary. And I have to point out, too, I also thought that Bobby Jindal did just as well as Carly Fiorina did. I just don't think he's getting all the attention that she is, maybe just because, she is a lady.
Okay, she told Fox News Sunday, Rachel, she will not replace a single retiring federal worker. And, of course, lots of baby boomers will retire under the next president. And so I think that's a bold statement to make. In a sense, I think she's perhaps trying to get some attention here that is going to Trump to just say, hey, listen, I'll do some really bold things, but they'll be well thought out, in contrast to some of the things that, we're just not sure what he'll do.
Yeah, she has just been impressive. She's way more conservative than people thought, coming out of California. We kind of thought she was going to be more of a liberal. No, she's even conservative on, pro-life issues. She's going to be a cost cutter. She's not going to back down. I think she's the real deal.
Okay, yeah, we worry a little bit about her on the marriage issue, simply coming from California and really saying, I did hear her speak soon after, and she basically said that, the court has decided, but a lot of folks, especially real conservatives across the country, are not ready to give up marriage quite yet. We will talk more about the debate, who benefited, who lost, and where do we go from here with Rachel Alexander. We'll be right back with more of Point of View.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The United States developed a culture of free enterprise early on, and most Americans want it to continue. That is one of the conclusions from The Battle by Arthur Brooks, president of the American Enterprise Institute. The founders promoted a free market. Thomas Jefferson said this in his first inaugural address. A wise and frugal government take from the mouth of labor the bread Americans, the freest people in the world. During his time in America, he was struck by the fact that Americans pursued their interest under the supervision of limited government and banded together in voluntary associations. Arthur Brooks contends that we live in a 70-30 nation. A Pew Research Center poll asked a broad range of questions of Americans, one of which was, generally, do you think people are better off in a free economy, even though they may have severe ups and downs from time to time? Almost 70% of respondents agree that they are better off in a free market economy. You know, the good news is that 70% of Americans believe in free enterprise. The bad news is the other 30% are in control of important arenas in our society, such as the academy, media, and government. And that leads to the subtitle of the book by Arthur Brooks that says, How the Fight Between Free Enterprise and Big Government Will Shape America's Future. This is our challenge for the future. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus documentary, now available on DVD and online for digital download. More information at patternsofevidence.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
My guest is Rachel Alexander. She's senior editor at The Stream, and she's a great writer and political commentator, and we're talking about the debate. We're kind of trying to look at the aftermath of it. And Rachel, there were fireworks like between Christie and Paul, but what about the people that sort of hung back? I wonder, for instance, like Rubio or Ted Cruz, they gave fairly straightforward answers, good answers. Huckabee, of course, Ben Carson, but they weren't as flamboyant. And in a sense, I think perhaps that was by design, letting everybody else sort of fight it out and showing their their statesmanship. What do you think?
Well, they're getting different advice from their advisors. Like Jeb Bush was told, do not attack Trump. Marco Rubio was told to go for the jugular with Trump, apparently because Marco Rubio tanked in the polls recently, and so they thought it made the best sense for him to go after Trump. People like Ben Carson, while he didn't necessarily go out for the jugular, I thought he was the surprise hit of the debate. I thought that he did excellent. Everyone says that after the fact Donald Trump both lost and won, but I think the real quiet winner is actually Dr. Ben Carson.
Really? Well, a lot of people agree with you because we're seeing his rise in the polls. And, one of my friends, Penny Nance of Concerned Women for America, when, people say that Trump is taking on the issues that other people won't, but actually she says he's not the only person who can do that or talk about these issues. And perhaps, and I don't know what you think about this, but I'm thinking that perhaps as this thing goes on, we will see people taking up the things that Trump does and sort of taking his place in a more substantive way. Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, Ted Cruz and Bobby Jindal, they say a lot of the same things Trump does. They just don't add in that extra, rhetorical flourish. They're going to talk real straight talk with you, but they're not going to say the things like, oh, we're going to make the Mexican government pay to build a fence on the border. Trump says this stuff. Well, yeah, and it excites the base, but is it realistic? Is he really going to do it? No, he's never going to be able to force the Mexican government to do that. So, again, I think these other people are saying a lot of the same stuff. They're just not saying the ridiculous stuff, It's wonderful to rile the base, but come on, be honest about it.
So here's the 5 actions. Ted Cruz said this also at Red State that he said he'd take. He says he'll rescind every illegal executive action by Obama, including the executive amnesty, instruct the Department of Justice to open an investigation of Planned Parenthood to prosecute its crimes, instruct Department of Justice and IRS to quit persecuting individuals seeking to practice their faith in the workplace, end the Iran deal, and begin the process to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So he's got sort of 5 simple ideas. I don't know that he was able to say all that in the debate, but he's been saying it out there. So I think him as a conservative. I see him as a moderate. And some of the others who were there, Jeb Bush too. Did he help himself with conservatives?
No, he said from the beginning he is not going to run as a conservative. He's going to run as if he's already in the general election, and he's sticking to that. I mean, he did not sound like a conservative during the debate at all. I thought he came across rather poorly because he kept defending his record, things like Common Core. So I don't think Jeb Bush helped himself at all. If I were Jeb Bush's advisors, I would tell him to run as a conservative.
Well, maybe he wants to lose the primary to win the election.
Yeah, I mean, what a defeatist attitude. And John Kasich, oh my gosh, I think he did almost the worst of anyone in the debate. I mean, you are correct. He is not a conservative. I say he makes Jeb Bush look conservative. Not only is Kasich as liberal on, the Common Core, legal immigration, as governor, he voted for the assault weapons ban in 1994 when he was in Congress. This guy's no conservative, and I think a lot of it came out during the debate. I do. There's really no room for him. You've already got Jeb Bush taking up the whole moderate vote. Kasich is polling horribly. I could see that one being the swap. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna battle with you. Impressive. He's inspiring, but I think he's a weak candidate. I don't think that he's going to be putting out there policies that are believable or convincing us that he can really do something. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I am inclined to agree with you. He's so new to politics. I mean, just because he did well at this one debate does not mean he's going to continue to do well, and he's going to, come up with the Ted Cruz's, 5-point plan. I do think it's a weakness of Carson being so new. So yeah, there's probably some truth that he might not be a realistic candidate. Not yet, maybe in 4 years.
What about candidates playing it safe? Because we had some people that had a lot of kind of good aura around them, like Scott Walker. I mean, just a lot of enthusiasm out there. You've also have, Ben Carson is one that you certainly have that for. So you see that, and Mike Huckabee. I mean, conservatives have loved him, and this time he's not getting all the attention from the conservatives, but he still does a nice job on stage. So what about them? I mean, where are they going?
I don't really see Huckabee necessarily going very far. I think, I personally really like him, and I do think he's charismatic and he's sharp as a wit. I mean, that guy has some of the best zingers of anybody. But again, he's so moderate, and he's turned off a lot of the conservative base over the years. Finally, that I don't really see him breaking out of the middle of the pack. Now, Scott Walker, on the other hand, as we know, was polling right after Jeb Bush, right till Trump jumped into the race, and so I thought he had the best chance of anyone to rally the conservatives behind him. I just think, as you pointed out, his performance during the debate was a little more, even keeled. And I just wish he would talk slower and, be a little more deliberate about some of his statements, because he just kind of rushes through everything that he says, and you're not left feeling, wow, that was profound. I feel like he just needs a little debate tips.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I look at those guys up there, and I actually sometimes thank God as I see the riches that are up there, the brilliance, the great personalities and all of that. I mean, because I think it was Marco Rubio that made really one of the statements of the night during the debate, having to do with, look what the Republicans have, and not to be partisan or anything, but, the Democrats have a whole different story to deal with, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, have you in your lifetime ever seen a presidential candidate this good, this conservative? And I mean, it's incredible.
I hope we don't. I hope the conservatives don't blow it with the riches that we actually have.
Well, and I think it's just you got that double irony there. You put so many good conservative candidates in the race, they're all going to split up the conservative base vote of the Republican Party, allowing somebody like Jeb Bush to get the nomination.
It's possible.
It's good and it's bad.
All right, one more question, and we've got to have you back, Rachel. You're fun to talk with. I do want to ask you, though, if you were advising these great candidates up there what to do about Trump, what would you advise? Would you say go head to head with him, try to ignore him, or what?
I'd go head to head with him. I don't see why some of them are letting him have a free pass. The more he's allowed to stay and do what he wants, the more popular he gets. They need to just cut him down to size and just, I would start pointing out that, the things he says are unrealistic. They're not possible. He's not telling the truth. I just flat out say, you're not telling the truth. You're never going to be able to have Mexico, build that border wall. So why do you say things like that?
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. We will have you back.
Thanks, Penna. I got it now.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's Rachel Alexander. She's from the Stream. There's a lot of good things to read there. I also want to point you to pointofview.net because I took Peggy Noonan's column over the weekend about the debate. It was really good. It pulled together good analysis of all of them, and we've tried to do our own here on Point of View today. And I think we'll just watch these races, and we'll talk about them and take your calls here at Point of View. We are going to also move on to the Planned Parenthood just revealing videos. But let me open up the phones, 800-351-1212. If you want to talk about the debates, what you're seeing, what trends you're seeing, and perhaps do you have someone who you thought helped themselves during the debate? We'll take all of that. We want to send you to pointofview.net. We've got all our resources available there. As I said, Peggy Noonan's article on this issue is there, and our donate button is there. And here we are. In the doldrums of August, needing to continue to keep this show doing the job that it needs to, and stay with us.
What can you get for $5? Can do. If every listener to Point of View sent just $5 this week, believe it or not, and someone here did the math, Point of View could pay the bills for the next 3 years. That's what the number said. $5, 3 years. That's how many of you there are and how little it takes to keep us going. The problem is, most of our listeners have never contributed. Never. To make up for those who don't, others give large gifts, hundreds, even thousands, or monthly donations of $30, $65. Can do, but I encourage you to do what you can today, even if that's $5. Click the Donate Now button at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or send your gift to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Thank you for doing your part for Point of View. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
Well, let's count them now. We've got 5 videos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these undercover videos, each one progressively sapping Planned Parenthood's ability to defend itself or really to lie anymore. And the media outlets are being shamed for airing any of these. And we're going to talk about this with someone who watches the media as a profession. His name is Tim Graham. He's Media Research Center's Director of Media Analysis. He's been on this program many times before over the years. He was actually White House correspondent for World Magazine at one time. He's done so much media, I don't even have time to recite it all. Been on television, on many of the major networks, and we're so grateful to have you, Tim, here on Point of View. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Graham is going to help us understand what's happening here, because we may be at a turning point with regard to Planned Parenthood and its deception. Tim, what do you think about the fact that Planned Parenthood is coming after these networks, even starting lawsuits to stop its really its story from being told?
The liberal media love. They really see that as not really as a business. Obviously, they would say, well, it's a nonprofit. Well, it is still a very large money-making enterprise. They may call it a nonprofit, but, you know, when you watch these videos and have them talk about their revenue stream in the news media, because they see them all as, I don't know.
Well, when you have their people talking about the bottom line, that's not nonprofit language.
That's it. And well, and obviously, you know, nonprofits do want revenue streams. Usually, that's called donations. But you know, I think here, the videos are quite clear. Was good at, you know, when they are starting to say that the research department at Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast is a revenue producer, you know, better than the abortions themselves. It's almost sort of kind of implied. I mean, it's amazing to me that, you know, like the New York Times can editorialize, oh, this is all deception and lies. You know, well, why don't you actually say, all right, what, you know, here's what you said. Now try to dodge it now or rephrase it. That would be interesting.
We placed on our website, ladies and gentlemen, an article that was actually recommended to us by the Media Research Center. Planned Parenthood is telling media undercover videos should not be aired. And it starts out, it's by Tom Bloomer, and it starts out, in some areas of the country, Planned Parenthood has gone on the offensive against local and regional news outlets in an attempt to minimize the exposure of damning undercover is with us from Media Research Center. Now there's been a restraining order placed on Planned Parenthood to, not to show the videos if they have anybody in them from the National Abortion Federation. I'm sure there's plenty of videos that don't have them in there. And that's been extended now until the end of August. So is that going to squelch this or slow this down, or is this just going to move forward? I know one of the videos was released since this restraining order was issued, but do you think it's going to have any effect on the release of these videos, Tim?
Well, it sort of depends on which way you're asking. You know, I think if we're looking at the long term and we want to say the Center for Medical Progress obviously has more reporting or more exposés here that the public should be interested in viewing. That's one thing. Can they get these released? I don't know. I think in terms of the media coverage, what you would have to say is you got some media coverage with video number one, and ever since then, they've tried hard not to talk about it. And the primary way they're talking about it now is not by talking about the videotapes, but by talking about the congressional moves to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, as a citizen or as a media critic, to me, it seems like the real danger here for Planned Parenthood is not just the defunding issue, it's the branding issue. It's the idea that they are synonymous with savagery. That's what they're trying to avoid. That's why they run around everywhere talking about how they're a vital force in women's health. Well, another thing that these videos really expose is the notion that the women's health becomes secondary. They clearly are saying, well, no, we remove the babies. They don't use that term, of course.
They don't use the word babies.
No, they would, well, a little bit, but, they remove the specimens and they will lengthen pregnancies out. They will, bring the babies out in more dangerous ways to the woman so that they can have intact specimens for the labs. I mean, and that's quite clear. That's in more than one of the videos. And CNN, at least online, not on the television, but CNN online, went to Arthur Kaplan, who is a liberal medical ethicist, who said this is not ethical, that you would say the women's health is secondary to removing this specimen for the laboratories. That's what's being missed here, that it's central to Planned Parenthood's branding to constantly say women's health, women's health, women's health. No, women's health here is being put second or third on the list in terms of, well, no, we need to bring these organs out for harvesting, and that's what matters most.
You mentioned, and I really think this is true, that the vote that Congress took, and of course they were unsuccessful because they needed to get 60 votes in the Senate to even get this to move forward, to defund Planned Parenthood. This is a no-brainer, and it becomes more so with these videos. It's still not being done. And so the media is able to, because they refuse to tell all the details or really sufficiently report what's in these videos, they still are getting away with demonizing Congress over hurting women's health and taking away their opportunities for poor women to get medical care. I mean, in a sense, I feel they're still getting away with it, and it's almost not helping yet. Perhaps more videos will help, but not yet.
Well, I think the way that the news media never admits that these are damaging videos, because they're ideologically committed to the success and the prosperity of Planned Parenthood. That this is, again, they would be willing to say the oil spill was bad for BP, but they're not willing to say these tapes are bad for Planned Parenthood. And so instead they're going to all talk about the denying these. They don't offer mammograms, or most of them don't offer mammograms. And so it's one of these, this is one of those stories where you just simply cannot count on most media outlets to not only be balanced, you can't count on them to be factual, and I think that's, I saw a story, I guess, after the fourth video or the third video. These stories that have been done on these videos, the few TV stories that have been done, they run like 4 words from the videotape. They really try hard not to show you too much of the videotape, or they'll show you something while they talk over it, but they don't let the audio run. I thought Tapper did it in a way that allowed both sides to speak. He used larger chunks of the video where you could actually hear what the Planned Parenthood officials were saying, and then he would turn to Planned Parenthood and let them denounce it. And that's what we would expect them all to do.
Right.
Is let's have a debate about the practices and the ethics of this company.
Well, I think one of the most telling parts of the video, you probably never see this on network TV, is where but you're not seeing it. Tim Graham is my guest. We will open the phones and take your calls, 800-351-1212. If you want to weigh in on the media's coverage of this, I'd love to have you do so. You can ask Tim Graham questions or tell us things you've seen or not seen. Do you think the media is doing a good job covering the release of this information, these undercover videos from Planned Parenthood? As I said earlier, Congress is not in session. There may be a so perhaps this week we won't see a new one. but we will see more of this. And we've got calls about the debate. If you have comments on who benefited and who did not, I will ask Tim Graham, I've got him here, about what he thought about the media's coverage, or what he thinks about their coverage of these debates and how they're handled. We'll do all of that right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Misbehaving right, then they calls at 800-351-1212. Anywhere, but their brand, that's probably where the most damage is being done, because we're seeing the care that they provide, moving away from what they try to say is the woman. And when you see that they're trying to make so much off the products of this, which they get out of it is the babies. And even in this fifth video, we've got hints that they're trying to get full cadavers for medical research. It's pretty gruesome, isn't it?
It's like some stories, I think, a couple months ago or a year ago that we were doing about how there were fetuses being included in things that were being burned at outrageous. And this is where I love the way the news media, when they get accused of liberal bias, go, we are just in favor of a good story. It's not an ideological thing. We're just in favor of a good story. I'm like, well, burning babies for electricity sounds like a pretty juicy story if you ask me. I mean, and this is where you just know, this entire Planned Parenthood story is an interesting story, and this is the question they don't want to ask. The Kermit Gosnell trial should have been a whole occasion to ask these things, and that is, what happened? The garbage, then what? Because they. I was just being amused here at the New York Times, which ran an editorial over the weekend, saying it's vital that you allow animal rights activists to tape inside factory farms because that's a matter of public interest. But somehow it's horrific that activists would film inside an abortion clinic because that's not a matter of public interest somehow. Or that's deception. Well, yes, there is deception involved here. They posed as someone they were not, and the animal rights activists did the same thing, and the news media has done the same thing. They went into Food Lion and got jobs in the meat department at Food Lion, trying to see if the Food Lion people put out tainted meat, and they couldn't prove it. And that became a big lawsuit and everything on the part, against ABC back in the early 90s. But, I mean, this is a tactic that has been used. We pointed out on Newsbusters that in the year 2000, ABC's 2020, Chris Wallace did a story very much like this about sales of baby parts. So if ABC can do it, certainly the Center for Medical Progress can do it. You can see if ABC did it in 2000, they clearly could have done it in 2015. And, the bizarre part of this 2000 story is they go to Gloria Felt, who was then the president of Planned Parenthood, and she just says, this is monstrous. This is all wrong. Obviously, Planned Parenthood's had a change of heart on that.
Do you think the heavily edited part of this is gaining any traction? The idea that these videos are heavily edited, Planned Parenthood tends to claim that.
Well, obviously they're edited, right? The 10-minute videos you see are edited because they're from 2 hours of interviews or whatever. Well, they show the larger video. They provide a larger transcript. The networks, when they do this stuff, they don't do that. They don't show you the 2 hours they got. They don't show you 2 hours of transcript. Network news now does heavily edited stories that last 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And so, there's nothing more hilarious than a TV news personality passing along the idea that these are heavily edited. Right? But basically, I think what they're saying to some degree is we were exposed. These people tricked us. So it's dishonest because they were tricked, that they were lulled into a false sense of security and described their business as it actually is. That they make jokes about bags of baby parts. And those are the parts of the images, the videos that are too gross for some people. But again, this is it's fascinating that the New York Times, is really concerned about the treatment of cows and just not that all that concerned about the treatment of human babies. Because, the difference here, of course, is that the women, it's empowering for the women to take the lives of their babies. And so that's where they come from.
Wow.
That is they think Planned Parenthood is providing a public service. And so you must be deceptive if you're out there to suggest that there might be something distasteful about it. And the New York Times isn't going to do a 10-part series on how do they dispose of the baby parts if they don't sell them.
Well, they definitely should. Listen, Tim, I want to ask you, because I said I would, just to make a comment about the way the debates are being handled. Do you think that we've done the best we can, or that the media has, with so many Republican candidates out there.
Well, the questions were really tough in the primetime debate. To some degree, that some of these questions are the kind you might expect the liberal media to ask. I thought Megyn Kelly's question about supporting or opposing abortions even when the life of the mother is involved. Pose that as a devil's advocate question. But, there were some real hardballs in there. I mean, the unfortunate thing is the Democrats are sure not going to submit to a Fox News debate this time. I think it's important in the debates that follow that, CNN and the other networks that do it, try to do this to try to bring, run this as this is a Republican primary election, and you have to be about addressing the questions Republican primary voters have. And that's where the liberal media moderators have been terrible before. They seem more interested in just damaging the candidates. And again, if you're one of these candidates, you might have felt that some of these Fox questions seem destined to damage you. Obviously, Donald Trump feels that way about Megyn Kelly's question about him calling women fat pigs. The problem with that question, again, is everybody can imagine that's quite common in Donald Trump's everyday life.
Well, I think the information, the good news about this, and that was helpful information for voters. That should be the purpose. It wasn't actually a real debate, but it was a time of questioning. And that the questioning brought information out. And, some of the debates just tend to be so boring because everybody has to answer the same questions in a true debate style. So right. Do you agree with me that this might have been kind of a good way to do it in a sense to get the voters information? I only got 30 seconds for your answer. To understand, kind of where this thing is. And we'll be watching some more and certainly listening to you guys as you stay on top of this. We appreciate your being with us today.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot of calls here on the board. If you can wait through the break, we will take them afterwards. Stay with us for more of Point of View.
Of Evidence, The Exodus on DVD. Earlier this year, thousands gathered in theaters nationwide for a one-night event, the release of a new documentary, Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus. The Exodus presents new scientific evidence clearly matching the biblical account. A documentary now available on DVD, featuring narration by actor Kevin Sorbo and interviews with leading archaeologists. Patterns of Evidence, Exodus, the DVD, soundtrack, and book, and available online for digital download. More information at patternsofevidence.com. And please take action today to support passage of the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. Supporters of life have momentum right now like we've rarely seen in over 40 years. Take a moment right now. Visit pointofview.net. Click on the action alert for the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. Pointofview.net. We've made it easy for you. Please don't let this moment pass without taking action. Pointofview.net. Go now, pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
We have been talking today on Point of View about the media coverage of the debates and also of this series of videos about Planned Parenthood that have been so revealing. And, of course, about a week ago, actually last Tuesday, this is what the Family Research Council said. They said it's bound to be an uncomfortable day for 45 senators now that another Planned Parenthood video is reminding voters who the politicians are standing with hours after they voted to protect the abortion giant's $500 million in taxpayer funding. The Center for Medical Services showed the world another instance of Cecile Richards' group selling off intact babies like cattle at an auction. And this fifth video, if you haven't seen it, does give us the idea that there is an attempt to get intact babies, which in some senses, when this is investigated, which I hope it is, we'll find out that they're perhaps doing partial birth abortions, which is illegal. And but all of it is just gruesome. Asked what pieces Planned Parenthood could harvest in this fifth video, the group's executive replies, everything. Central nervous system, brain, kidney, thymus, liver, spleen, femur, bone marrow, et cetera, et cetera. And they said that Planned Parenthood will bake into our contract and our protocol that we follow is this. So we deviate from our standard in order to do that. In other words, they do something basically illegal and change the way they do the abortion, alter it in order to get the intact parts. That's what these videos have been about. And they're going to continue to come out. Family Research Council says nothing could sum up Planned Parenthood's business model better. These aren't babies, they're bottom lines. That's what this medical research director said on the video. So we are taking your calls on this issue. We'll have another guest to talk about it. But let's go now to Dan in the state of Georgia. Hi, Dan. You're on Point of View.
Hi. I want to start off by saying I'm against the funding of Planned Parenthood, and I agree that especially the partial birth abortions are horrendous and murder. However, I want to make reference to a book. It's called The Origin of Human Life by R.B. Thieme, and in it he states, well, it's evidence through the original languages of the Word of God, the Hebrew of the Old Testament, that human life actually begins at birth. So
that's what his. And do you agree with that?
100%, yeah. And I think any Christian that reads the book, The Origin of Human Life by Colonel R.B. Thieme out of Houston, Texas, would come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, reading the book, but what about the Bible? What about Psalm 139?
It's based on the Bible. It's based on the Word of God.
What about the description of the baby and how God knew that child in the mother's womb?
God knows everything. Of course he knew the child in the mother's womb.
And that they've been created from eternity. They've been in the mind of God and the heart of God.
Correct. I agree with that, but also the Hebrew is naf shamal. God breathes in the breath of life at the point of birth. It's a biological life in the womb, but not human life.
You know, it's so interesting that you say this. I mean, I can see someone saying this maybe 40 years ago, but when we look at when we look into the womb now and we see, I mean, there's so little difference between that child that you see on the sonogram and the one that's out a day later or 2 days later in the world. that.
Yeah, but that's biological life. That it doesn't have a human soul.
Okay.
God breathes in the breath of life. Yeah, it looks like a human being, of course, but only God can create immortal life, and He does that at the point of birth. That's the reason for stillbirths. God does not breathe in an immortal soul, so the baby is stillborn. A biological
Wow, you are making
fetus.
some big leaps. Hey, listen, I think you've said enough, and some folks are probably going to react to this. I really appreciate your call. All right.
Have a good day, sister.
Ladies
Bye.
and gentlemen, that's not what we believe here at Point of View. We believe that human life begins at conception. And, we don't think there's any question about that, but certainly Dan has a right to his opinion. I had no idea he was going to say that. I guess I should have known that because that's exactly what you wrote, Catherine. Wow. Okay. Let's go now to Steve in Nebraska, because we also are opening the phones here to talk about the debates and what folks thought about it. So, Steve, what do you think?
Well, first, I'm overwhelmed. I think I forgot what I was going to say.
I know.
Because of the
Me too.
ignorance of your last call. He must be from the Obama administration trying to drive a wedge between us and the Israelis and the Hebrews. But anyway, here's my comment. Donald Trump, during the debate, I thought made a comment of good substance, and it pertains to today's conversation. He said something to the effect that the political press is dishonest. And I have yet to hear anybody in the press take on that issue, defend themselves, or say he's wrong. And I think that was a really good insight by him and a strong comment. I just wondered what you thought about that.
A critical press is dishonest? That's what he said?
Oh, no, he said the political press.
Oh, the political press.
The members of the political press are quite often dishonest, something to that effect. And I have yet to hear anybody in the press take him on. I mean, they all want to be crybabies that he put some gloves on them, but they have not defended that. And I think what you're...
I guess I didn't even remember that statement, and obviously they haven't covered it because they don't want to cover something like that.
Well, that was the one when people said, well, what did you think about the debate? I said, well, I thought all 10 of those gentlemen could do a wonderful job, but I think Trump made a real good insight when he said that, and
that is a good insight. And that's what I like about it, is that he brings up topics, and so he's allowing some of this to be bantied about. And so in a sense, as the candidates decide how to deal with him, I think it's best not to ignore everything he brings up, because some of the things he brings up are true and very good, and they hit a chord. So that was one of them. Thank you very much, Steve, for calling on that. We've got a guest who's going to join us, and actually I'm going to introduce her after the break because we've got so many calls here. I want to just take a call really quickly to rebut Dan about life beginning at birth. Let's go to Sarah in Texas. Hi, Sarah. What do you think?
Just the first immediate thought was the fact that the human DNA is already set in stone, and so this child's DNA is going to look different than an animal's. But then specifically talking to the breast, sorry, I get really nervous. I gotta breathe. Talking about when God breathes in life to the child, just because it's not breathing in air as we do at this point, it is still breathing in the mother's, and then later.
Yeah, the mother's the source of life. Preemies and are saved. I mean, like, who gets to decide when that is? I mean, sometimes babies are taken early just to save their lives and all of that, and they're alive. Anyway, thank you for your call, Sarah. We will bring in our guest and continue this discussion right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby and
remember the work experience you received by various summer jobs. If you're a bit younger, if you're a teenager, you probably have never had a summer job, and that's a problem. Working a summer job while you're young is a great learning experience. You learn some skills. You'll learn a little bit about certain jobs and get a better understanding of what you might want to do as a career. On a summer job, you learn the importance of being punctual, being responsible, and having a good work ethic. You also learn the value of money and how to manage money. I thought about all this when I read a piece by Jonah Goldberg on how to kill the summer jobs for young people. Just continue to raise the minimum wage. That increase makes it harder for employers to justify having an untrained teenager work in a business or a factory. They're taking a risk by hiring someone with no work experience, and often the work the teenager performs does not provide enough initial benefit to the manager of the business to justify paying them an ever-increasing minimum wage. More and more young people are growing up without work experience. Some augment it by doing an unpaid internship, but most lose that important experience of a summer job. The argument for raising the minimum wage is to provide a living wage for people with few job skills. Jonah Goldberg points out that there are other ways to subsidize low-skilled workers. One option might be to expand the earned income credit. That's a topic for a future commentary. My point is that we are hurting an entire generation of young people who are growing up without having the learning experience of a summer job. That is not a positive trend. We need to reverse it. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus documentary, now available on DVD and online for digital download. More information at patternsofevidence.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. My guest now is Amelia Hamilton. She is contributing associate editor of The Stream, and she's a conservative blogger, author of the Growing Patriots series of children's books. And Amelia, we've been talking before you joined us about the release of these videos, and we're on number 5 now. That what goes on in Planned Parenthood research facilities, kind of being forced on us because Planned Parenthood is doing these things. And do you think, in a sense, that their defenses are being destroyed by these videos and the revelations that accompany them?
What we need to be concerned about is people who are just so caught up in the talking points that they're not willing to listen to any truth. They're not willing to consider anything that doesn't support what they already think they know.
Well, speaking of truth, Planned Parenthood says that, and they've been claiming that they don't alter the abortion process. And if there's anything we learn from all of these videos, and even and especially the 5th one that came out with this research director, I think her name is Melissa, is that there is a change in the way the abortion is done in order to alter the way the parts come out or whether or not you get an intact cadaver. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and really the use of the word cadaver is pretty interesting too, and that they realized that it was a live. They're very clear.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you've all seen these videos or if you want to see them. We've got an article that's up at pointofview.net. This is by our guest, Amelia Hamilton. It says 3 lies exposed in the 5th Planned Parenthood video. It has some clips. It doesn't have the whole thing. But it's not hard to get hold of these. And this is vital for those of us who are pro-life to be able to expose the lies that are being told. And our guest, Amelia Hamilton, is explaining these. A second one, Amelia, is that Planned Parenthood claims they're not making money from this fetal tissue. And I mean, that is just patently not true, isn't it?
Right. Again, they talk about, ways to preserve the babies, ways to, they refer to the baby parts as line items. They don't want to sell it as one baby at a time because that doesn't get as much money as if they sell it, part by part for organs and limbs. It's just talking about making. Right. It's a scary way of looking at human life to see that this is how people are thinking.
All right, let's go to the phones now, Amanda. We've got some callers out there who want to talk to you. Let's go first of all to Vanessa in New Mexico. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do my best to control my anger and my emotion at this, but I don't understand why our Attorney General has not been forced. How can we force the Department of Justice to send people to close down these specific Planned Parenthood, put bakers and florists and everybody out of business? But I don't understand. The only thing I know to do personally, because I've got to do something, is I made a poster to go sit out in front of there's Planned Parenthood facilities here, and just hold up a sign. I don't know what else to do, but I have to do something. But I just don't. What can we do to force it? They're breaking the law, regardless of what people feel about abortion. They are breaking the law. So I have to do something, and I know there's a lot of people that must feel the same as I do.
I think you're right, Amelia. There about this that's going on, and yet we have an attorney general who, the reaction of our administration was the illegality of making the videos, not what Planned Parenthood was doing.
Right. Yep.
Sure. Yep. They're absolutely in kill the messenger mode because there's really nothing to argue. It's so clear what's going on that they just have to try to discredit the people who have exposed them.
Amanda, there was one part in that fifth video where somebody, I think they actually slipped away from Planned Parenthood's approved terminology because they used the word baby. But that's not what they call these babies that end up in bags or wherever, in freezers. It's not what they call it. It's not what Planned Parenthood calls them, is it?
I'm sorry, that was for me.
Yeah. Amelia, are you there?
Okay. Yes. No, they call them specimens. They call them waste. They talk about how they are mixed together in garbage. It's just horrifying, but they do know that these are babies. I have no doubt that they know that. They maybe try to make themselves feel better sometimes by referring to them as specimens, but I think they know.
Yeah. All right, Amelia, I appreciate your calling in, and stay on top of these. We'll continue to discuss them as these videos are released. My contention has been that perhaps even I know there's some battles, legal battles about releasing more of these, but also just the idea that Congress is not in session. Perhaps it's better to string them out a little bit because it's gaining some attention, I think. Don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still several videos to go. I don't think they're going to be able to hide this as much as they want to. I think it's already gaining a lot of attention, and it's just going to keep doing so.
All right, Amelia, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this. Let's take another call. Let's go to Opal in South Carolina. Hi, Opal. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. I just wanted to make a couple comments about the man that said it was not a human until it came out of the mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
In Jeremiah chapter 1, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you, and I ordained." He will be great in the sight of the Lord from his mother's womb.
Opal, thank you. There are just
Galatians
a couple of the
chapter 1,
scriptures that
Paul
will help
also
us
says
to
that.
refute this whole idea that Dan brought forth, making really an arbitrary, I think, dividing line. We're learning more and more that it is an arbitrary dividing line. It's something that's biblical, and we also know scientific. Let's take another call here. Let's go to Clay in Texas. Hi.
Purchasing contraception when life begins.
Yeah, good point. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do continue to take your calls here on Point of View. We're going to bring in another topic after the break, but this is a discussion that needs to be pursued, ladies and gentlemen, as we get the evidence of what's going on at Planned Parenthood. And I think if we in the pro-life community across the nation don't stand up against this, then perhaps no one will. I think the more we speak out about it, the better, because as some callers mentioned, this warrants an investigation by the Department of Justice or any apparatus from the various states. Planned Parenthood should not be doing business and certainly should not be getting taxpayer money. And yet, for some reason, this continues. We can't even get the U.S. Congress to vote, get enough people to stand up and say they'll vote in the United States Senate to bring this out on the floor so that people can understand where their senators stand on this. I mean, it's really an abomination, and I think it's time now for us to demand that something be done about this funding of Planned Parenthood and now these activities that look to be illegal. We can't take any more calls here in this segment. If you'll hold on, we'll try to take some after the break. We've got another guest joining us, but we know we've sort of struck a nerve here, especially some of the controversial falsehoods about when life begins. Life begins at conception. That's biblical, and it's also scientific, and it's our position here at Point of View. We're very clear on that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we continue to take your calls, 800-351-1212. I also want to point you. There you'll find information about all our guests and the article by Amelia Hamilton, 3 Lies Exposed in the 5th Planned Parenthood video. It's about exposing Planned Parenthood. Go to our website, check it out, and don't forget about the donate button. We'll be right back after this.
There is a big incentive to pay your electric bill. If you don't, you find yourself in the dark. But who pays to make sure you're educated on the key issues of the day, to bring you wisdom for life at work, at home, and in the culture, like you hear from guests here on Point of View? Who makes sure that our electric bill gets paid? You're way ahead of me, aren't you? That's right. You do. The truth is, if every listener this week gave just $5, we could pay our bills for about the next 3 years. Did you hear me? $5, 3 years. Now, perhaps you can give more. How about $50 or $500, maybe even more? But please, don't be the one who fails to send at least $5. Click the Donate Now. Box 30. And thank you for your gift. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
Welcome back to Point of View. We've had, in case you're just joining us, we had a caller named Dan from Georgia who was arguing and actually making a statement about when life begins as contrary to really orthodox Christian belief. He said that life begins at birth. So we've got a lot of people calling in on that now. And of course, the context of this is these videos that have exposed Planned Parenthood, the fact that they not only charge for the abortions they do, which is the biggest part of their business, but also now we're finding that they're actually altering the abortions to do them in such a way that gets the body parts that they feel that they can transfer on then to other entities and for research or whatever. And so, folks are calling in now to say, no, life begins at conception. This is, God's created us in our mother's womb. It was his idea throughout eternity. And so let's just take a couple of these calls before we bring our next guest in. Let's go to Eileen in the state of Texas. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Thank you for calling in.
Hi, Penna. This is Eileen.
Eileen, okay.
It happens often. My point is, after working in medicine, in the medical field for 30 years, we've always determined that life ends when the heartbeat stops. Okay? And we can't revive that. Now, when I was pregnant with my first son, my doctor did a sonogram and showed me the heartbeat, and I said, that's awesome, but where's the baby? And he said, he's too small to see yet.
But he has a heartbeat.
I could see the heartbeat on the sonogram.
Wow.
So if we can determine that life ends at, with the heartbeat stopping, it's the same as with it starting.
There have been these bills out there that I don't know if any of them have passed in any states, but they've attempted to pass bills that really made abortion illegal when there was a heartbeat because of that very idea in our hearts and minds that this is a baby when there's a heartbeat. And certainly it's the way it should be. That's not the way the laws are here in our country right now. But I think that idea is the right idea. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Eileen. Thanks for calling in.
And I appreciate, and the man that called Dan, he's very offensive to us Jewish people because he doesn't understand Hebrew.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't either, but I do understand biblical truth about life.
Right.
Thank you so much, Eileen. We appreciate your call. Let's go to Hugh in South Carolina, listening in on WLPG. Hi, Hugh.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call, Penna. Concerning the Hebrew, I'm not a scholar in Hebrew, the Hebrew language, but I think it is important to point out that there is life because there are two living single cells coming from the two individual parents. Life, it really doesn't begin at conception. Life continues at conception because you have two living cells come together to produce a new life. It is life. The cells are living. DNA is established. It can be proven that it's human DNA from the get-go. And what this gentleman was indicating, apparently, as I understood him, was that in order for that humanly proven entity in the him right, was a necessity of breath, breathed in by God. Well, obviously God started with Adam and Eve by breathing into their nostrils. He didn't start with the conception process because they were the first, but I would ask him to show me anywhere in as I can the babies at birth. It's his prerogative when he gives the Spirit, and he doesn't tell us in the Scripture when he gives the Spirit after he gave it to Adam. It's a false assumption that the child, the baby, must have the breath of God breathed into him in a literal way at birth to be a living soul and spirit.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, we do know that there's not the Holy Spirit present in the child at birth. That happens at the new birth for each human being also. So that's just another thing to add to that.
Which was not the case with Adam and Eve. What comes into us at birth is not the Spirit of God, it is the natural breath that is necessary for life.
Okay, well, thank you, Hugh. Appreciate your calling in and making that very profound point. Let's take another quick call before we bring in our guest. Mike has been waiting from South Carolina. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hey, I've got a question. I haven't heard the question yet asked either on TV or radio channel. What are they using the parts for?
The companies buy the parts, or, well, the terminology they use is reimburse the abortion clinics for the parts in order to do research for various diseases. And this has been video on body parts research departments where these were shipped, and they had to certainly be shipped in certain ways to get there intact. There's a lot of research being done, and, you know, there's been lots of fighting over the legality of doing it, but one thing that is patently illegal is to alter the abortion procedure in order to get certain parts and get them intact, and that's what we're finding out is happening through these videos.
Yeah, all in the name of science.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for your call.
For
we appreciate it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we just got another topic to introduce here. Just here for the last segment and a half of the program. It's a sort of conventional wisdom. And that is, advertisers will say, and we see a lot of advertising that shows this, that sex sells products. And yet there's a new study out that says sex actually doesn't sell, and neither does violence, although that's been sort of conventional wisdom. And with us to discuss this is Tim Winter, who is president of the Parents Television Council. This is a nonpartisan education organization. Many of you are familiar with Parents Television Council. They advocate responsible entertainment. They do a lot of research. Tim Winter he was actually with NBC for 15 years, but he's been with Parents Television Council for many years. That's been a great help to a lot of parents in raising their kids and media consumption, and they've been frequently joined us here on Point of View. And Tim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, good afternoon from Los Angeles, and I hope we're not taking too sharp of a turn away from your last conversation. That was very, very passionate.
Well, we take a lot of sharp turns here on Point of View, and we try to cover important topics. And I think this one is important. First of all, it's very important that we have a Parents Television Council in Hollywood watching the media. And I know that your people watch just hours and hours of television and try to help parents to understand what's out there, don't you?
That's right. We have a staff that records and watches all the primetime broadcast shows and a number of cable shows. And our objective is to protect children from the graphic sex violence and profanity that seems so pervasive in entertainment today, and to really help parents along, both in terms of their education, make sure they can make better choices. We help them there, and also to help them be advocates and really advocate for more positive change for a healthier and more responsible entertainment media environment.
Well, we have posted at pointofview.net. First of all, you can see the bio of Tim Winter. And near that, you'll see an article, Sex and Violence May Not Really Sell Products. And this is a study. It's a meta-analysis of 53 studies. And so it's huge. And it was done by researchers at Ohio State University. Tim, tell us about the study and what it showed.
Yeah, it's interesting. You teed up the question just perfectly. We are told as citizens that even though we turn on the television set and we are offended by how much graphic sex and violence there appears to be on the airwaves, that this is required because the advertisers want this stuff, because that's how the advertisers are the ones actually writing the checks to the television networks. They're the ones, giving them money so they can run their advertisements. And we're told that in order for the advertisers to be successful, they have to have these graphic programs that help them sell their products. And what Dr. Bushman at The Ohio State University uncovered, and this is, again, a meta-analysis of dozens of research reports, it shows that that's actually not the case, that when a television commercial appears in a TV show that contains sex and violence, that the viewer actually is unlikely to remember the brand that was advertised. Wow. It runs counter to it. It says that if there's sex and violence on the show, the viewer's not going to even remember who the advertiser was, and that certainly is a waste of advertising dollars for the sponsor.
Tim Winter is my guest. He's with Parents Television Council, and we're going to delve a little bit more into this study after the break. It's very interesting. It says that programs featuring violence and sex perhaps are not the ideal context for effective advertising. So we'll ask Tim more about this. Stay with us for the final segment of Point of View. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to pointofview.net and you can pick a psychological bulletin, and they talk about sex and violence in commercials. So one of the conclusions here is people are so focused on the sex and violence they see in the media, advertising message.
They found that unless the advertisements themselves are very violent in their content, and they air within violence, a violent show, the on graphically sexual and graphically violent television programming.
So the commercial would have to kind of one up the show as far as violence and sex goes to be effective. If it's a funny commercial, if it's a very compelling commercial, a lot of that gets blurred because of the content of the actual show they're advertising on.
That's exactly right. And most corporations have to advertise on television their goods, their services. They need to make sure that the public knows that it's millions and billions. I think the last number last year was something like $80 billion was spent on television advertising just in 2014. $80 billion. And every dollar is spent to change the behavior of the viewer. And so why would you then want to then sponsor or associate your hard-earned brand image with sex and violence? It also suggests that it's bad business to do so. In an environment like today, a media environment, so many parents are just sick and tired of not being able to find a safe place to turn on the TV and sit with their family and watch something. Well, now we're looking at the sponsors of the shows, and they themselves should be questioning that very same thing.
This is such an interesting finding. It says here from the article, they found that memory for brands and ads was significantly impaired in programs containing sex violence or both sex and violence. Overall, people had less favorable attitude towards brands that advertise in violent media compared to neutral media. You have to wonder, Tim, if this is partly from just the way the sex and violence works on the brain of the viewer.
That is what the conclusion is by the Ohio State University professors, that when the human being is watching these programs, whatever happens when they watch sex and violence, that stimulates the TV commercials. It's a concern for parents and families when not being able to have a safe media environment. They can certainly vote with their remote and change channels, but the reality is the advertisers are the ones who are paying for it. And if they were to be more mindful of where they put their media dollars, I think we'd have a much more healthy media environment for everyone. And hopefully this study by the Ohio State University will encourage the media buyers of the world to say, you know what, maybe we should be trying to find something that's a little bit less explicit.
Well, this kind of dovetails with what we hear from a person we have on often here on the program. That's Ted Baer from Movie Guide, because he will tell us that the movies that make the money aren't the R-rated movies. They're the PG and PG-13 rated movies, that the sex and violence are not the moneymakers in Hollywood, but Hollywood has an envelope to push and agenda, so they make these kinds of movies. And in a sense, it's good to get this message out to television networks, but there might be agendas that still put wholesome entertainment for the advertisers.
Dr. Ted Baer is correct in what he's saying, and here's more proof of the same thing. Actually, if you go back even to the weekly Nielsen reports that show how many people watch any television show in particular, over the course of the year, the most watched shows on television are NFL football games, dancing competitions, Dancing with the Stars, and singing competitions like The Voice and what used to be American Idol. Those are shows that the whole family can watch together without fear, generally speaking, of really shocking, explicit, and kind of surprising, explicit content. If a family can go and enjoy entertainment together, it's usually very profitable, especially if it's high quality. Whether it's a movie or whether it's a television show, families yearn for this type of stuff, and you got to scratch your head and you wonder what's going on in Hollywood, where there are all these dollars that suggest do it in a way that the whole family can watch. And the egos of Hollywood say, yeah, but I want to push the envelope. I want to be the cool guy at the party here in Hollywood, where I'm being provocative and edgy. It's a very ego-driven game here.
I wish I had another segment with you, but just give us a couple of recommendations for family entertainment. I remember probably 10 years ago, I used to have regularly folks from Parents Television Council on to really keep up on it. It was when my kids were younger, and I really personally just wanted to know what was good out there to watch. And of course, we have different ways you would recommend based on what your organization looks at.
Yeah, it's funny. We have published for years the top 10 best and worst television shows. It's tough for us to find 10 that are good now.
Really?
It's sad, it's pathetic, but we look hard, but it's tough to find 10. There are a couple of good ones out there. Actually, there's one coming up here in a couple nights on the Up television network. A lot of folks don't even realize they have the Up, which is like uplifting entertainment. The show is called Ties That Bind, and it's a We've spoken with the executives of that network, and they have pledged to us that it's going to be safe for family viewing, but it's still a very good, powerful, positive storytelling. And the Up Television Network, I'd urge your listeners to go and look at their cable lineup to see where it shows up. But I think it's Wednesday night is the premiere of Ties That Bind. And again, it's rare to have a cop show that doesn't have layers and layers of violence and layers of profanity and sexual content. This one does, and it has a concept of faith where the family prays it around their table. It's really a positive thing, and we would urge your listeners to consider that one.
Well, Tim, thank you. Thanks for the tip, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about this study today.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
That's Tim Winter from Parents Television Council. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening today. Tomorrow, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk with someone who will help us find sort of creative and interesting ways to share our faith. I think it's something that all we believers want to know and need encouragement in. And also, as we talk about this progressive administration, this move to the left that's taking place in so many areas, one area is the environment. And really, the Obama administration's attempts to manage the economy through environmental regulations, through the Environmental Protection Agency. There have been some new developments on that front, and we need to be talking about that here at Point of View. We're going to begin that discussion with one of our guests tomorrow, and we'll just stay on top of the news. And as always, we will take your calls. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to go to pointofview.net. It's a great resource for you. We've had 4 guests today, and there's an article up there that goes with those discussions, those interviews, if you want to learn more about any of them. And I think especially this whole issue of the undercover videos that Planned Parenthood, that are revealing so much about Planned Parenthood, you may want to apprise yourself of it either by watching videos or just going and reading about it, which is I kind of recommend that for people that are not wanting to see the actual offensive content. But please go to our website. Also, just check out that donate button. This is the time in the summer when we could really use your help in helping our broadcast continue every single day to do these programs. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
From PureFlix, the creators of God's Not Dead, comes Do You Believe on DVD and Blu-ray. 12 unique lives, 12 different stories, one path. We'll bring them all together.
So you believe in Jesus?
Do You Believe? Mira Sorvino, Sean Astin, Alexa Penavega. Do You Believe? On DVD and Blu-ray. Available now. Supporters of abortion are on the run. Several states have pulled their funding from Planned Parenthood, and this is the time to take advantage of the momentum and keep by the impact. Take just a minute or two right now. Stand up for the unborn. Go to pointofview.net. Click on the action alert for the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act.